I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?
You're on Bound for Glory on Sydney, here with myself, Jordan,
Joe,
Matt,
Paige,
and Damon.
We've got a pretty big show today. First off, we'll start with last night's game, the Saints and the Tigers. Guys, how'd you see it pan out?
Yeah, it was a great game. Richmond 2-0 to start the year. Quite good.
Settle down, Joyce.
No, I will not settle down.
It's
been too long.
Jumping Jack.
He was great. 7 goals. Definitely a better return than last week, although he did play the team role last week. Always good to see Jack kicking a few.
Was it right I heard that first time Richmond's won 2 games since 97?
It is.
What happened in 97, Joyce?
Missed the finals.
and you lost your coach.
Yes, we did.
Now, speaking of Rewalds, Nick Rewald as well, he was fantastic last night, I thought. He was very... he just absolutely took rants all up and down the field, and he kicked 4 goals, and I thought he was more impressive than Jack Rewald, even though Jack kicked 7.
He was a very good player, Nick. And in last year's game as well, Rance and Rewald had a really good battle. I've got to say as well, number 25, umpire, thank you very much for what you did for Richmond, because we would not have got over the line without your help. I mean, every single 50-50 decision went Richmond's way, and I've heard people say that that's what happens when you become a better side. That umpires just really notice more of the good things and less of the bad things. But if that was of the Richmond of 2010 or 2011, we would not have won that game if the 50-50s were just 50-50.
Speaking of bad things, were you a bit nervous in the last quarter again, Joyce? Just like last week against Carlton?
I was wearing what I'm wearing now, and I had to take off my jumper because I was sweating. So it wasn't good.
Yeah, Clint Jones and Trent Cotchin, pretty interesting matchup last night. I think Jones had the better of Cotchin at the start, but went on to nearly being best on ground.
Yeah, he had, I think it was 22 second-half disposals, which was really good to get a break away from the tag. Really shows how much of a hard worker he is. I wouldn't give Cotchin best on ground, though. If it wasn't Rewalt, it would have to be my personal favourite player, future Hall of Famer, Reece Conker. Superstar. He had an amazing performance last night. I think it was 14 score involvements and 3 direct goal assists. Was hitting the forwards up constantly. Really showed that he's a better player than Dyson Heppel last night.
Oh, what a cop-out.
I thought you were going to say McGuan was your best player last night.
It was
He
all
played
right.
all right.
He had the same number of shots at goal that Jack did, and he kicked 2 goals instead of 7.
Troy Chaplin went all right as well. He had a brilliant game.
People were saying that he had a garbage game last week, which I don't know if that was true. He had a okay game last week. He didn't have a bad game, but this week he was good. Not great, but good, and that's what I want.
I think Richmond have found one in Ricky Pettard, though.
Oh.
He played really well last night.
Tells a lot about Melbourne's development if they can't get someone with obvious talent like Pettard. And he won his... he was a Rising Star nominee in his debut year when he was playing as a defender. And then they're like, let's shift him forward. And then, he had a really good season in 2010, I believe.
And then got injured.
And he nearly won the game at Queen's Birthday against Collingwood. But, yeah, hasn't been the same ever since. And now playing quite well.
The defensive role seems to be where he suits.
Yeah, the loose man in defence, really nice role for him. Jake Batchelor was... I think Richmond got the matchups a bit wrong last night, because Jake Batchelor is not a good one-on-one player. He seemed to be a couple of metres behind Beau Meister last night, and it just didn't really suit him, and Chaplin was also playing that role, so I'd like to see Chaplin actually play a one-on-one role more often.
Ben McAvoy, outstanding last I don't know. There's something about him. He's so slow. I can't stand watching him.
Big boy McAvoy can't run him down. Big boy.
I don't want BT to ever commentate another Saints game ever.
If you haven't looked it up before, YouTube Brian Taylor ruins football. It is the best YouTube clip I've ever heard. It's amazing. So, speaking of petted with Melbourne, Jordan, talk to us about them.
Right, well, Melbourne's they're in a bit of a crisis in terms of their leadership. Not since the days of David Neitz has Melbourne had a captain who really led the club well. Brad Green was pretty maligned, and now they've currently got two young heads in Jack Trengove and Jack Grimes leading the way. Of course, Trengove didn't play last week in the thrashing, but Grimes sure did. But Grimes wasn't the one to address the team after the game. It was Jack Viney, the first gamer. In some ways, it speaks a lot about how much Viney, how he is as a player and a person. But at the same time, it also highlights how poor Melbourne's leadership group is. Mark Neal brought in some pretty experienced campaigners in David Roden and Shannon Burns in the off-season. But they've been around the game for so long and been in teams that really understood the highs and the lows of the AFL season. But neither of them spoke to the team. So Jack Watts has gone on this week and copped heaps of flack. The former number one pick, he's played a lot of games and he's been tried out around all over the field, and in the preseason he looked pretty good, but he had an absolute shocker last week. So it's really time that someone else steps up for the D's. Personally, I don't think Trengove nor Grimes looks like the perfect candidate that can handle the leadership role. I think Nathan Jones is the perfect candidate, and I don't understand why he's not captain.
Well, speaking of Jack Watts, in the aftermath of the game last week, he was saying, oh yeah, it was a real lack of leadership, that's why we lost, no one was really ready to stand up. You're a number one draft pick, and you were drafted in 2008. You've been in the system long enough. If you want the change to happen, you need to be the change. So don't just sit back and let everything happen for you. He was, coming from a private school myself, this is a bit rich, but he's a private school kid. He's been fed everything his whole life.
Do say so.
Yeah, just put on his little monocle and everything. But it's really time to just grow a pair and do it yourself. Don't whine and expect everything to be done for you, and just tag along and do what your captain says or something. If you want to have a good career out of yourself, you need to take it upon yourself to go and do something.
And get rid of that beard.
It's terrible.
It is a horrible beard.
So what do we make of Jack Viney's speech?
Spineless. On Melbourne's behalf, not on Viney's, but disappointing that an 18-year-old took it upon himself to get up, tell his teammates to pull his finger out. I don't like that at all. I mean, it's not really his place, and although it's a great attribute to have as a leader, and that's going to be fantastic in 10 years' time, but right now it's, he should be excited about that he's debuted for the club he's grown up following, his dad's played for. I'd be excited about that. He shouldn't have had to get up because no one else did, and that's terrible on Melbourne's behalf.
I would have loved to be the fly on the wall during the post-match. I mean, I get the feeling that Viney would have just been standing around. He wouldn't have been the first one to jump forward and do that. He would have thought, it's not really my place, blah, blah, blah. But I can just imagine a few minutes going by and it's just silence and nothing's happening, and he just looks around and is like, is anyone going to say anything?
Well, apparently nobody did, and that's the problem, is that people were just quiet. Players didn't really say anything. They just went off and did their post-game routine, and he got up and apparently sources out of Melbourne camp that were there when it happened said that he was actually quite distressed and almost, you'd say, upset, almost in tears at how disgusted and embarrassed he was for the team, for the jumper. And when you've got someone that's bled red and blue his whole life, his dad's done the same, there should be more.
You can really tell the difference between the players that love playing football and love playing for the club and ones that are just there to pick up a paycheck and have the role of AFL footballer so they can go out on the weekend and pick up chicks. It's quite obvious to see, the types of players. Colin Sylvia has so much talent, but he's lazy. He's a senior player, and it's disgusting that someone as talented as him won't be able to get the most out of his career that he could have.
Do we blame the players or do we blame the development coaches? Because I think Footy Classified had a stat from 2003, only 2 of the first, 13 draft picks they've had, the first round draft picks, are still at the club. Sylvia and I think it was Jones. Or tap
Frawley
squat,
as well, yeah.
Well, they've had some pretty poor recruiting over the years. I mean, it's only seen last year when they saw that Jordan Gisbert's, Lucas Cook, Cal Morton gone. You know, a couple of years before that, Tom Scully gone. I mean, but when you look at their off-season, they did lose almost 800 games of experience. And it doesn't matter who you are and what club you are. That is incredibly hard to cover. And as you said before, Joe, about the development coaches, I think that probably doesn't leave enough room to really grasp just how good the development coaches are. I think now it's probably about how well the kids coming up are going to be able to sort of cover those holes. But their recruiting in the off-season was supposed to be quite aggressive and they're on the forefront, but they haven't really recruited born competitors that, I mean, Roden's on one leg, Shannon Burns is almost washed up, you could probably say. Cameron Pedersen, well, he's been dropped. Look, jury's still out on him. I still think he's got still a lot to offer.
He did.
But when you consider that, you know, guys like, I mean, Shannon Burns especially, he's in the leadership group and he needed to stand up and do something and he did nothing. And I mean, they've still got Dawes to come in who's yet to really prove himself either. But look, their recruiting and drafting's been questionable.
Yeah,
you could say at the very least as well.
With Pedersen, he was dropped, I think, because he ducked his head, and that's not what you want an experienced player to be, you know, showing for an example. And like I said, with Sylvia again, there was a contest that they highlighted on Fox Footy, I believe, where first gamer, I think it was from Port Adelaide. I forget who it was exactly, but it was Jonas, I believe it was. He was running the ball out of the back line, and he just kept running and running and running and running and running, and Sylvia was just, you know, trotting along. And it was an easy rebound 50 for Port Adelaide. And it's that young players look at that sort of thing and they think, you know, if he's not doing it, why should I have to do it? Even if it's not, you know, that conscious thought, in the subconscious, it'll just, you know, permeate through their play.
But even then, when the Port Adelaide players were coming off the bench, they were huffing and puffing. They couldn't blow out a candle. And when you look at, in contrast to Melbourne, they were jogging off, barely breaking a sweat, looked uninterested, and, you know, as a result, the scoreline reflected that.
Well, with the development coaches, you can, it's an old saying, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So, you know, the development coaches might be doing a, you know, fine job, but if the quality of players that they're recruiting aren't the ones that are going to want to get the most out of their career, there's not much you can do about that.
Yep.
And, you know, you need to really ask questions of the recruiting, again, with all these first-round draft picks that have gone and left. I'm sure a little bit would have been to do with, you know, Melbourne's culture and that sort of thing, but, you know, fingers have to be pointed at the recruiting staff.
So, who should be the rightful captain of the D's then? Is Trent Gove and Grimes still the best option?
I think they went a bit early
with
them, and I think even Trent Gove said it himself that he found it very difficult in his first year, and he's probably only really warming to that role now. And I'm not quite sure how it is. I think he's about 20, 21, around that age. So, I mean, that's a lot to take on. And when you consider that Melbourne, the foundation club, they've got the longest running history in the AFL, that's a lot to take on as a 21-year-old who's, you know, still within his first contract.
Do you think Melbourne pushed their senior players out too early? You know, the likes of James McDonald, their ex-captain, and Brad Green. Who else is there? Robertson is another one. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's affected their leadership, like the core leadership in the older players, and someone like such as Grimes and Trent Gove had to step up prematurely?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, when was the last time they made finals? Was it 2006?
Yep, 2006. Yeah.
So those players would have been the only ones that really had experience from back then, and, you know, this is what it takes to make finals. I know they brought in Shannon Burns and Chris Dawes, and Mitch Clark, but it's not the same. It's not homegrown talent, and you really need to keep the people that made the Melbourne Football Club.
I mean, they did make the point that these guys weren't going to be part of the next, you know, premiership campaign or finals campaign for that. But at the same time, if you compare them to Brisbane and look at Simon Black, I mean, he's been there for, you know, over a decade now, and, you know, probably could have retired a couple of years ago, but Voss elected to keep him on so that he could bring that leadership and he could hand over the reins and teach these guys about on-field leadership and off-field leadership and what it takes to captain and, you know, a successful team. And I think pushing these guys out of retirement, and you can see as well with the Western Bulldogs when Rodney Eade retired, West a bit too early, I would have thought, and that really ruffled the feathers of a lot of the younger guys at the club. And I think that probably may have contributed, in a sense, to what this, I guess, the buzzword culture is now. Is, how do you define culture? I mean, is it just, are we calling it, Melbourne have got a bad culture because we don't know what's going on internally, or is it really a culture? I mean, considering that they're struggling to retain players, and so many want to leave, and not many really want to be there.
The thing that I reckon pisses most Melbourne supporters off, you'll see last week, no effort whatsoever, but they'll come out tonight and then they'll bust their balls, and they might win because they've been Essendon the last 3 times.
Yeah, they've had a pretty good run considering.
And then say they do a good effort against West Coast, then against Essendon, sorry, and then they'll play West Coast the week after and get belted at the
it's
G.
like they perform under pressure.
It's like you can't play special football. You got to play consistent football. It just pisses people off.
Yeah, bang on.
All right, Paige. Now you are a SuperCoach expert, the CEO of the website SuperCoach Paige. Joining us on the panel today as a special guest. So, first off, tell us a little bit about how you first got into SuperCoach and give us a bit of a background on your best results over the years.
Look, I originally got into SuperCoach it's purely because I probably accidentally fell into it. A lot of friends of mine, were playing, so I thought, may as well get involved. And I like footy, and that's probably 2005 now, so that's a while ago. So I jumped in and got stuck into it. Had some pretty good results. Got incredibly addicted, as it is very easily to happen. And a couple of years ago, for about 3 years running, I made the top 1,000 in a row. I think some of my best results probably more towards the 200-ish mark overall. So and from there, it just sort of being on sort of forums and blogs and sort of becoming well known to an extent there on the internet, and people sort of pushed me to come up with something of my own, and I did, and that's where I am.
Very lucky to have the name Paige as well. It works really well with
And
it.
it's funny because I got bullied my whole life, primary school life, for Paige, and turn the page, and like as Paige, as in like a book, and people would come up with these stupid bloody puns, so to speak, and it's sort of good at the moment that I can use it to my advantage for once.
And Paige, a lot of people ponder whether it's worth trading out underperforming premiums during the first 3 rounds before price rises. Would you say it's more important to get your team right during this time, or do you place great emphasis on conserving trades?
It's a catch-22. I mean, at the moment, I'm a big fan of not trading early on, especially knee-jerk reactions, especially after round 1. You've got premium players who definitely underperformed in round 1, and there'll probably be some new ones again this week. So really, I think allowing yourself those 2 to 3 weeks to really assess the market, who's been good, who's been bad, who's going to drop in price, go up in price, I think that's what you wait for at the moment.
And last week we got insight into some of the boom rookies for 2013, with Wines and Viney both making impressive Supercoach debuts. What other rookies should we keep an eye out for in the coming weeks, do you think?
Look, Big Joe Danaher, I mean, last night he kicked 4 goals in the Essendon VFL side, and, he's been pretty good his first couple of weeks in the VFL, and, Essendon said they're going to persist with him, so he's one to keep an eye on, and I definitely think Doherty, when he comes in, he's going to be a great asset, but at the moment might look like that Brisbane have got a few too many rebounding types at their disposal. So, surplus for them, which is great, but for coaches it might be a bit of a waiting game. But and Dan Curry, he'll be a star when he gets his opportunity, but at the moment Goldstein's just edging him out.
Dan Curry's playing a little bit like the Jonathan Griffin role, really, just waiting until Sandilands, or in this case Goldstein's out, for him to shine. Definitely.
I think we saw even last year in the SANFL, he was in the probably the top 3 ruckman, and he's great obviously in the hit-outs, but around the ground as well when he can really use his athleticism, and up forward he's a pretty good asset too. So when he gets his opportunity, he'll be a good cash cow.
I had the problem of naming my captain last week, Dane Beams. What do I do?
Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, Beamer's out for the next 2 weeks, and I probably say that he'd probably be out for another 3 to 4. And that's purely because Collingwood will not take any risk with him whatsoever, given he's the reigning Copeland Trophy winner. They're going to take a very cautious approach. So the media have said 1 to 2 weeks. I'll tell you right now, it's probably 3 to 4.
So trade him.
Trade him, I think you have to. That's probably where right now you'd say, going back to what we said before, Damon, about conserving trades. I think when someone's out for a prolonged period of time, so obviously Mark Lacroix at the moment, and Dane Beams as well, that's when you consider trading.
And it's a good time to consider trading him out as well, just because the price rises are coming. You can pick up on, a player that might be underpriced. Sam Mitchell, I believe, might be underpriced, someone like that.
Yeah, look, there's quite a few. I mean, if you look at, I know Shuey had a bit of a poor game because he obviously copped the tag from Crowley the week before, but he's at 500,000. He's incredibly cheap. Mark Murphy's thereabouts as well. Kieran Jack's a bit underpriced for what he's capable of delivering, but I mean the great thing is with Dane Beams, because he's in the top 4 price players this year, you can virtually afford anybody. Except Ablett, of course, and who's going to rise in price.
I got pretty burnt last week with having Kane Mitchell on the field and Viney on the bench. Now, on the topic of rookies, is it worth side trading the rookies in the first 3 rounds to make sure you get all your cash cows right? Because I don't have Wines at all, and I'm thinking about if Mitchell doesn't pull his finger out this week, I'm going straight swap.
Yeah, it's a pretty awkward one because you want to make sure that you get on the boat with these rookies before they go up in price, because once they go up in price, there's no use getting on board. It's really a waste of money. But with Wines, I think a lot of people, some would suggest that his first game might have been a pretty big fluke in regards to he scored 125 points. So quite a few coaches will assess it this week to see what he scores. But, I mean, he will go up in price, so it's good to get on him. But you really do want to try and get onto those rookies that are going to rise in price early on. If you miss the boat, it's lost money, and it's you're going to have to find somebody else to eventually upgrade to.
I mean, you got to remember that Wines played against Melbourne.
But I mean, on the flip side of that as well, I mean, Kane Mitchell tweeted that he's looking forward to he's enjoyed his entree and he's looking forward to the main meal in 2 weeks' time. So Port Adelaide will play him, in full game. So he's a ball winner, and Port Adelaide need ball winners. I mean, with the game against Melbourne aside, they've got a problem in the midfield where they don't have players that rack up a lot of the ball, and Mitchell's one of them. I mean, given he's a reigning Sandover medalist and 2-time premiership player with Claremont in the waffle, he knows how to find the ball.
Yeah, it's basically just Brad Ebert now that does that sort of accumulating role. And
definitely. Well, Travis Boak's bobbing up. He had a great game last week, and
improvement from Hartlett as well.
Of course, Hartlett will definitely move through, and he's a good person to get onto if you haven't got him in the back line.
And they're playing GWS this week as well, Port Adelaide, so still it's the rolling lockout, isn't it? So you can still
it is. So, I mean, that's sort of, we were a little bit unsure of how that was going to work this year, especially because those who have the time will benefit, those who don't are going to suffer. But the rolling lockout, especially, for those coaches out there who are tactful, who like to keep their opponents in the dark, it's a great weapon. And considering that you won't know your team, your opposition team's team, the lockout's fantastic. But you can definitely, obviously, sub in players, trade out players, as long as they haven't played yet. So that's a benefit, which you sort of, you could almost argue that it screwed me last week with Heath Shaw. So,
and with Ablett, he's obviously your lock and leave captain for SuperCoach, but are there any, for those coaches like myself that don't have him in SuperCoach, who would you recommend? I mean, I've got Mitchell as the captain this week. He tends to do quite well against the WA sides, especially in Perth, but any other ones that you would think of?
It's pretty hard to go past Josh Kennedy, and he, at the Swans, 80% of his disposals are contested. And in SuperCoach terms, that's huge. I mean, that's the more lucrative side of points that you want to gain. And Josh Kennedy would be a great captain choice. Also, Jobe Watson. He just looks like he's going to go one better this year already. But I mean, even then, it's really hard to go past the guys like Collingwood boys, Pendlebury and Swan, who are always going to rack up big numbers. But for me, I'm a really big rap for JPK this year, and if you haven't got him, he might be someone to consider because he'll rise in price as well, which is a bit scary.
Thoughts on Andrew Swallow?
Brilliant game. He had 137 points, I think, from memory. It really baffles me that a lot of coaches, decide to continually overlook him. What was he last year? I'm pretty sure he was #1 tackler and really up there in the clearances. So again, that's another area of SuperCoach which comes with lucrative points. And when you're talking about 4 to 6 points for a clearance, and contested possessions is double what a normal possession would cost you. he's brilliant, and he's a great point of difference as well. Not very many coaches have him. I think only maybe even 12 or 15% actually own him. So if you're looking for a bit of uniqueness to your side, Swallow's definitely an option. Yeah,
definitely. And you've got a website that's pumping out articles every day. Can you tell us what that is?
It is. It's www.scpaige, that's Paige, .com.au. And obviously we're always over social media, so on Facebook and Twitter. And the YouTube show, which has kicked off, which you two guys would know very well about.
It's a great show.
I've been scarred.
Yeah.
As though, if you haven't watched the show, each week, for the past couple of weeks anyway, we've been engaging in bets because our sides have been facing off, and the loser has to wear the opposition colours. So that was quite fun. I had to wear the Richmond, what would you call it?
It was a hat with mittens, let's call it.
Mittens, yeah. It was quite warm, but scarred me at the same time.
Yeah, you'll be wearing Collingwood colours as well this week as well, won't you, buddy?
We'll have to wait and
see.
Yeah, that's
it.
All right, on to our next topic. Hesse, going to talk about the Bulldogs.
Bulldogs, yes. It was fair to say the Bulldogs didn't have a great season. They beat Hawthorn by 1 point. It was an undermanned Hawthorn. I think it was their first win in 11 weeks at that stage. Apart from that, I thought nothing had changed. Uncompetitive and slow. Got belted by Freo. Moved forward to last week. They played off against NAB Cup winners Brisbane, who in my eyes look certain for a finals contention. Their midfield, rock clear for Redden. I thought, Brisbane will smash Bulldogs here. No one in the football community really gave the Bulldogs a chance. Home ground factor was out of the question, as only a couple of weeks ago Brisbane belted Carlton. Come 4:30 on the Saturday, I was wrong. The Bulldogs had come out and shocked everyone by smashing the Lions. I think McCartney's philosophy to play the kids and develop the team internally rather than doing a Melbourne and drafting a lot of mature age players to assist with development is flourishing at the moment. They picked up players from other clubs in Kobe Stevens, Tom Young, and boom VFL recruit Brett Goods.
We love Brett Goods here. Yes.
Love Goods here.
Haley didn't get a game for 10 years in the AFL, surprises me. But they haven't got overboard on their recruiting. I think that's the key. The major problem with the Bulldogs in 2012 was a lack of a big forward. Liam Jones did not come on as expected, and they really lacked any presence in that forward line. Jones didn't get much of the ball against the Lions, but he proved an option, a bit like Rewalt a couple of weeks ago. And he played a decoy role for Ace Cordy, who kicked 3 goals and could have easily kicked 3 or 4 if he took a few more marks. I personally think, I thought Gia Syracuse' best days were behind him, but on Saturday he proved me wrong. Ace Cordy still needs another couple of 2 or 3 years to develop, but his body is getting there. He'll become that big forward.
He was an absolute stick when he was drafted, so he's made a lot of improvement.
And this might be a SuperCoach one. Much maligned player Sean Higgins showed what a big.
The burn man.
Never again. Never again.
He performed well in the weekend.
He did. He had a blinder of games, but he's best for the last 2 or 3 years.
He'll rope you in, and he'll trade him into your team, and he will get injured by touching the foot.
Yeah.
It's something like. It'll happen in like the second quarter as well. He's the biggest cock tease I've ever seen. It's like he has a great first quarter, 30 points. He's like, yeah, Higgins on track for a great game, and hamstring twing. He's gone.
He's in SuperCoach terms, or the SuperCoach community refer to Higgins. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. Yeah. I'm going to say it anyway. They refer to him as the tampon of the team. He's in for 1 and out for 3, and it is a continuous basis. And that is why Sean Higgins will never be in my SuperCoach team again.
That is brilliant. I'm going to use that from now on.
You can tax that.
All right, what else about the Dogs?
The Dogs play Freo this afternoon, and I read on Twitter, apparently Pavlich is out.
Ooh.
Is he really? Why didn't I know that? That's terrible.
So I actually give the Dogs a real chance. This will be a real test to see if they can knock off a top 8 side. Ross Lyons' side's very well manned and well drilled, and if they can be competitive for three quarters and match it with Freo's intensity, it's fair to say the Bulldogs might jump this season. Agree?
Yeah, I mean, Bulldogs have always been a great contested team. Like, there was never any doubt of that. It was really just the outside use of the ball that was their problem. And, of course, that's what Ross Lyon really prides himself on as well at St Kilda and now at Fremantle. And with the Dogs playing their game in Melbourne as well, you've got another advantage. I've tipped Freo, but it'll be a lot closer than what I thought it would have been.
I think Pavlich out definitely, doesn't hurt the Dogs, and he had that hand issue against West Coast. Was it in his webbing, was it?
I think so, yeah.
That's probably a carry-on from that, I'd probably say, without knowing the details. Or was it his hamstring? It's his hamstring, which is something that he had
bit of both,
worked on the pre-season, so he's a bit underdone going into the first couple of rounds anyway.
And now being able to have a gun like Dale Morris play on not Pavlich will be a great...
Well, Dale Morris is great because he's probably one of the few players in the competition who can play tall, he can play small, he can play medium, and he can also rebound. So he's got just about every string to his bow as a backman. But I think Bulldogs, what they've lacked in the previous years is really good outside users of the ball that actually can deliver the ball into the forward line and use it efficiently. And Liberatore was fantastic last week, and he's probably one of those guys. They've got a lot of guys in that sort of 3 to 4 year bracket now, pushing 5, that really need to step up and go that extra level. And they probably showed last week that they're probably going to do that this year. And
if the tampon can stay on the ground, it could...
If the tampon stays in, they're going to get a shock.
Well, I think part of the problem with the Bulldogs before was that they were having to play these more outside skilled players in the midfield because they didn't have anyone really in there. And now, they've got recruited Kobe Stevens and Nick Lower from Fremantle.
Nick Lower looks great, especially as a tagger, and that releases probably back to the, we said before about outside users. Liam Picken, he was a pretty poor kick of the ball in his first couple of years at the Bulldogs, and he tracked it. I think it was almost 70% efficiency last week, which is elite. So
I've always liked Liam Picken. He's a really good player.
Well, his father was fantastic for Collingwood as well. So it's sort of beyond me why he didn't come to Collingwood. But at the Bulldogs, he was a great tagger. But as you said, Nick Lower coming in releases him, and just more depth to the Bulldogs midfield at the moment, I think.
Just on their youngsters as well. I was listening to Finey's Final Siren the other week, and they were talking about Wallace and Liberatore, and he actually said that they may become the new Pendles and Swan combination of the future. I reckon that's a massive call. They're good players, but
they're a bit shorter. That's one thing.
Wallace for sure. I mean, he's a fantastic contested player, and he loves that in and under stuff. And Mac already said in the off season that Wallace is moving now into that leadership role. They really, especially because there's such a young crop coming through, Wallace is going to be at the forefront of that next generation Bulldogs midfield. And perhaps maybe it's a bit of a long stretch to call, them Wallace and Libba, Swanee and Pendles, but maybe there's a few attributes that are sort of similar, but probably still got a while to go before that really.
There's promising signs anyway with Boyd ageing, and Griffin's he's now stepped up to take that top mantle, I think. So it's promising signs that they've actually got players coming through
and Cooney actually looked to have his pace back, which is something we haven't seen since 2008. And the Bulldogs supporters got pretty excited last week when they saw him with the ball in his hands and just take off like he usually does. And when he bursts away from the stoppages, it's very Judd-like in the sense that he just leaves everyone behind him, and such a good user of the ball. And if they can get him back to anything like he was in 2008, then I give the Dogs a really good chance to have a small ladder climb this year.
And if they end up winning this week, the Dogs, it'll be a blockbuster match, Richmond Bulldogs, who goes 3-0. Who would have picked either of them to be able to go 3-0 at the start of the year? It's
sort of good though. The way they've made the fixture this year, and aside from the Bulldogs playing Fremantle this weekend, a lot of the bottom 8 teams are playing each other early on, which is not only great for obviously viewing because it's competitive games and there's not going to be any real blowout, so to speak, but on the other end of the spectrum we see West Coast and Hawthorn this week play against each other, who are yet to win as well, so could start the season zip and 2.
Is that like a little mini equalisation measure?
It could. You know what? It's probably how things have panned out. But North and Geelong this week as well, and North finishing in the 8 last year could end up zip and 2 too.
On the fixture, what was the go with St Kilda's home game at the G last night?
It was their home game, but it was the Richmond replacement game because we sold one to Cairns, so members could get into general admission, I believe, just if they had the home ticket rather than the 16 or 17 game one.
All right, now, Joycey, the Bulldogs have got pretty average tall forwards. Now, another team that has pretty average forwards line is Carlton.
They are pretty average, aren't they? Well, it was just emerged in the past few days that many people might have already known this, but when his contract expired last, Travis Cloke was actually offered $5 million over 5 years to move to Carlton. And this is coming straight from Cloke himself, so it's not some random rumour. So
big footy rumours?
Yeah, big footy rumours. So essentially, Carlton didn't sign any free agents last year, and they didn't trade at all. Mick seemed to think that the list was good, perfectly fine. Judd's lucrative deal coming to an end, the one that saw him move over from West Coast. Some people are even debating that he might hang up the boots at the end of this year. He's got, children now, or a child.
Yeah, Oscar?
Oscar. Well, you love Oscar, don't you?
Oh, I do. He's a bit of a cutie.
And, that really frees up a lot of salary cap room. And Judd, even if he does play on, won't be able to pull the same kind of dollars that he's already been, raking in now, even with the Vizzy thing, which who knows if he's still doing it.
It's kind of hard now to even think about Carlton without Chris Judd, actually. It's become, so hand in hand. But it's interesting that they, I think Cloke, people will say, Collingwood people say that, perhaps that Cloke almost, took it upon himself to speak to Malthouse and sussed out the deal, and in the end I think that it came down to just the fact that he said at a Collingwood convention, so to speak, a couple of weeks ago, and I was there in attendance, I can tell you this, he actually said when he was questioned by Scott Cummings why he decided to turn down Carlton, he said, because I hate them.
No.
So maybe that came into it, the old rivalry drumming up, so there still is a little bit of loyalty left in football, which is good to see.
I probably, to be honest, if he took the deal and was playing with us, I'd probably still hate him as well. when Cameron came to the club, I kind of warmed to him a bit, but I still hated him deep down.
Yeah. Collingwood supporters really thank Big Satanta for that incident between him and Cam Cloke. It was a good day for us.
Yes.
Oh, brilliant. But really, with Lance Franklin, being the hot ticket of the off season upcoming, do you think Carlton could make a play for him? I mean,
they'd have to. I think anyone that's got that money has got to make a play, but I can't see him leaving Hawthorn at all.
I mean, if last week's anything to go by, and his reported antics over the pre-season or anything to go by, is he worth the $1 million ticket to stay at Hawthorn for starters?
Well, the great thing what else you've got to sort of look at when it comes to Buddy, and is he worth his money? The flip side of that as well is that he's the most marketable player in the competition. Kids love him, no matter what team you follow. People love him in general. He's a fantastic Indigenous star, and what that does for the Indigenous community is massive as well. So when you get Buddy, you're getting a huge marketing ploy, you're getting obviously a big name player, he puts bums in seats. If you're talking about him going to a club like Carlton, obviously 16 flags, one of the better known clubs in the competition, massive club and a massive fan base. I mean, last time Carlton had success was 95, so he could possibly single-handedly lead them to a flag if that was the case.
I think if John Elliott was still at the helm, he would do whatever it takes to get Franklin to the club.
If Franklin did go to Carlton, would they explode? The hype.
They're coming.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting.
Do you smell what they're cooking? That's the question. I mean, if you were Carlton, would you go after him, or would you go after two really good players rather than one absolute superstar?
You get what you pay for, in my opinion. I mean, you're a Carlton supporter, Damon.
Yeah, I'd definitely throw the money at him. He's an awesome player. As an opposition player, I still love him. As you say, he's such a big name in the game and can command the forward line and change games. So I definitely.
But on that note as well, with Hawthorn, almost half of their team is now over the age of 27, 28. And, I mean, traditionally speaking, premiership teams, when they win flags, their average age group is between 24 and 26. And considering over half now are above that age group, and you'd probably say that Hawthorn, I mean, there's still a lot of talent in their list, and they showed, obviously, in the weekend that they seem to, almost be there, but this constant problem is they're just not that good enough when it comes to it. So many guys now age. I mean, Sam Mitchell's over 30, Sewell's getting on 30, Gibson, Brian Lake. They trade off a first-round pick for Brian Lake, who's got a couple of years left in him. Buddy possibly might be thinking, well, hang on, look at the age of the list. We won a flag and we were we were on at the verge of a dynasty then, because we were all so young and we've done nothing since. And it'd be fair to say they've choked it up, considering 2009 they missed the finals completely. 2010 they went out in the first round. 2011 they had Collingwood on their knees and fell asleep in the last quarter, not to kick a goal, and Collingwood pipped them at the line. In 2012 they had a pretty damn commanding lead in the grand final. Again, didn't kick a goal in a quarter, and Sydney got the better of them. So
2 stupid mistakes really that cost them the game.
Yeah, and
Mitchell giving
even
away
back
the 50.
and even back to Buddy. Buddy missed a couple of sitters that that would usually be bread and butter for him. So when you weigh all that up and you think, well, where are Hawthorn at? Where am I at? I mean, he's 26 from memory, so he's in the prime of his life. Going to a side that is building, let's say, in a Carlton and Fremantle, who he's been heavily linked to, it all matches up. You look at Carlton's average age group, they're verging on 25. When you look at Fremantle, they're an incredibly well-drilled side under Ross Lyon and also in that age group too. So if Buddy's looking for success, then perhaps his best bet is elsewhere. But with Hawthorn, as we've said last week, they really should have won. That was a 40-plus point turnaround. And
With Lyon saying he won't chase Franklin's signature, I think that's a load of crap, honestly. I mean, Lyon's not the paragon of virtue. He's got... he stabbed Mark Harvey in the back to become the head coach. He had underhanded tactics, bringing Aaron Sandilands back in a couple of times last year. At, like, the last second, basically saying Griffin got injured in the warm-up, which I highly doubt, since he had a shit-eating grin on his face at the conference. I wouldn't rule it out. I think Lyon would be stupid to not go for Franklin.
Yeah, I think, definitely with Fremantle and that lure of going back to WA where he's such a big star, and then, best friend Sherrod Wellingham's over there with West Coast, and there's a bit of, obviously, Josh Gibson's 20 or 29, I think, around that age. So, I mean, those three have been, the rat pack of Melbourne for quite a long time. So, if he's got the opportunity to move back over to the West, it's probably something he's probably considering. And
if Franklin was to stay at Hawthorn, seeing as though he's already won a premiership with them, what motivation would he have to stay? That's the thing. Like the sticking point for me is that he's won a premiership there. Now I think he'll start thinking about himself and his future and maximising as much money
potential.
As he can get.
Well, I mean, he's with players in their contracts. I mean, they're getting bonuses for All Australian. They're getting bonuses for amount of goals kicked. If it's over a certain threshold, then it's more money in the bank. And when it comes to finals appearances, and then they've got these KPIs that they do work to in their contracts. So the money is there to be worked on. But really, when you look at it, a footy players now playing for the love of the game because they want to win premierships, or they're playing it for the money, and that's where you go. What's Franklin going to do? But if he wants to play with premierships, I don't think Hawthorn's where he needs to be. I think it's either a Carlton or a Fremantle for me.
If Hawthorn can't do it this year, then they're done.
Well, they have to. They have no excuse but to win, because they've traded off, I think from memory, 13 or 14 first-round picks for mature age talent from other clubs.
That's a lot.
So they've made the gamble and essentially sold their soul to bring in recruits from other clubs who they feel as though will help that premiership success. And we saw after 2008 they went hard for Burgoyne. They got Hale. They've got Gunston. He's probably an exception because he's part of the future. But when you look at all these players that they've brought into the club, and look who they've let go in the way of draft picks, they've traded away a lot of their future. So when you look at sustainability, Geelong, if we look at them in contrast, I mean, they've been able to win flags, be a good, consistent finals side, and also develop all these young guys through the VFL, and the guys coming through to replace the guys who will eventually move on are going to be just as good, because they have been given that opportunity.
And with these young kids coming through and the depth that Geelong does have, they've been able to spend extended time in the VFL and really develop. I mean, Billy Smets has come in this year and has done really well in the pre-season and in round one. And some people are thinking, who the hell is this kid?
Well, when you look at the guys like Murdoch, you look at George Holland-Smith, Taylor Hunt, there is so much talent in their VFL side, and I guarantee now any of those players will be walk-up starters in majority of clubs. And that's the scary thing about Geelong, is that they've retained high draft picks, they've used them, and they're topping up their lists accordingly. And when you compare that to Hawthorns, who are their next crop of kids, because their midfield at the moment, their average age of their midfield is 28 years old.
They're going to see a bleak few years, I think, like St Kilda are experiencing now, really, where they didn't blood any youngsters when they were playing, and now they're going to have a very a long down patch, really.
Well, they're in that sort of that rebuilding phase now as well, St Kilda, and but I mean, credit to them, they lacked a lot of 21 to 23-year-olds, but they've gone out and got them in Malera, Sard, Lee, Spencer. So these guys they've topped up their list with, but when it comes to it, the quality as well is what you've got to talk about.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the previews of this weekend's games. First up, Sydney Gold Coast up at that's
in Sydney.
Sydney, yeah.
I think this is the easiest game to tip in the round, and it's still not that easy. I mean, Gold Coast looked pretty impressive. Let's say that last week, and Sydney, I thought, were playing at near the peak of their playing ability against GWS, and they didn't destroy them. I thought, their defensively, Sydney were amazing, and if they don't turn up this week against Gold Coast, they might be in for a shock.
It'll be interesting to see who takes Ablett. I think Ryan O'Keefe's put his hand up, although he's not really a hard tagger. Who do you think they should go with?
Kieran Jack, probably.
Yeah?
I think hurt Gary Ablett the other way. That's the way to really affect him. His one weakness is probably defensively. He doesn't know how to do the tagging role because he's just so good offensively. But yeah, I mean, that's really the only way to play with Ablett. You need to take the risk that you're going to be able to force him to be accountable on the day, and if you can't do that, then tough, he's going to get 45 touches.
But is he even taggable? That's the problem.
I don't think he is. I think he knows how to just get away with anything.
His work rate's the most impressive of any player I've seen. So, I mean, and when you talk about tagging and close checking players, his centre of gravity and his ability to break tags and his burst and his first couple of steps and his first touch is just ridiculously good. So, I mean, trying to tag him is a good, it's what teams will continue to do. But really, I mean, we saw with Clint Jones last week, and he decided to take Harley Bennell rather than go to Ablett, which probably says a lot about how they rate Bennell.
Yeah, so everyone's tips?
Yeah, I think it's pretty consensus.
Yep.
Sydney, yeah.
And funny, is this the first time Gold Coast has finished in the 8 at the end of a round?
Yes, I think so.
It's a first.
That's quite good.
Oh, there you go.
Small
Congratulations,
steps,
Gold Coast.
All right, next game, Bulldogs Fremantle at Etihad today. So we talked a bit about this earlier. So yeah, what do you reckon, guys?
With Pavlich out, I'm gonna say the Doggies. Yep.
I can't go past Fremantle. They're too good. With Lyon, they're too good. Chris Mayne will have a great game, I think.
Yeah, Freo for me as well.
Dogs will push them, but Freo should win.
Yeah, I'll go with Freo.
All right, Brisbane Adelaide up at the Gabba later on today. I think that'll be quite a good game, actually.
So many close games this
Yeah.
week.
Great round of football.
Yeah.
So Paddy Dangerfield had a pretty off game last week. Do you reckon he can bounce back?
He better for my SuperCoach.
Well, with
Tell you what.
Reigns will probably go to him. He's an in this week, and Reigns plays very well on Dangerfield. But with Brisbane, having a very uncharacteristic loss last week, given their pre-season form, I think they're going to come out breathing fire and expect Brown to kick 5 goals, in my opinion. I think
that's pretty big, especially when
Brisbane
Adelaide's
might
got a
win.
fantastic backline.
They do, with Talia being the Rising Star winner last year, and
Old mate Truck.
Old mate Truck.
Truck Rutten.
He should go to Brown, shouldn't he, Truck Rutten?
I think so. That would just be the slowest match of all time.
It was very geriatric last year.
It'd be good to see Big Sauce on
Lundberger.
Taylor Walker.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, no. I
Sauce
thought you
Merritt.
Right.
Yeah, not Jacobs.
That'll be a very good matchup because I'm still a bit of a believer at the moment that Walker and Adelaide may struggle until that centre half forward that's going to work hand in hand with Tex who's going to really stand up, and until then teams are going to double and triple tag Walker. So I think, Brisbane, they got Goose Maguire's out, which is a bit of a loss for them. But I think Brisbane at home, I think that home ground advantage at the moment, and they need to bounce back. And well, Adelaide embarrassed at home last week, had a good opportunity to get off to a good start, but I think Brisbane for me this week.
The past two matches have been decided by under 10 points. That'll definitely be a close one again, especially considering both clubs want to get back into winning form. But I'm going to go with the Lions in this one.
I think home ground factor, Brisbane.
No, I'm going Adelaide myself.
Brisbane for me.
All right, next game, Bombers versus Melbourne tonight at the G. Look, you can say all you like about it and think that the Bombers are going to win, but I can't get excited about this game at all.
Well, who are you tipping? That's what I want to know. Who have you tipped? It's locked in now.
Well, I've tipped the Bombers, but I've tipped them the last bloody 10 times, and how does that go?
I think even the most one-eyed Melbourne supporters know tonight's probably a little bit beyond them.
Yeah, it's the end of the... Well, you're not playing them in June, so it'll be a bit better.
Yeah, that's true. There's no June curse.
They've had a week off. They're fresh. The Bombers looked exceptionally good, and their depth, as I said earlier, in the VFL's incredible, and they've got no injuries at all.
I think
clean bill.
Windley,
8 goals.
Yeah, kicked 8 goals
in
last
3
night.
quarters.
Incredible.
Yeah,
I mean, they did win by 90 points, or was it thereabouts? Yeah. So, I mean, it was a fantastic against the old affiliated club, Bendigo Gold. But for me, Essendon, they're just too good at the moment, I think.
Yeah, got to be Essendon.
If Melbourne do win, what will happen?
The world will end.
Oh, God. I think hell will freeze over.
I won't be on the show for a very long time. Dean Turley comes in and makes his debut this week. He's definitely one to watch out for in terms of Supercoach as well. So, yeah, look, I'm going the Dons, but no confidence.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Essendon. Melbourne's won the past 3. They won by 19, 33 and 6 points. So, I don't know, it's varying, but yeah, go the Dons.
Port Adelaide, Western Sydney over at Amy Stadium.
John McCarthy tribute
Yep.
back.
Yeah, it is. It was a great... we got a sneak peek of the tribute video for him, and it was quite moving. The players, some of them said on their phone, John McCarthy was their screensaver. So every time they went to look at their phone, he was right there for them. So it's clear that in such a short time at the club, he's made such a big impact. And I definitely think Port Adelaide will get up for this game, and it might be a smashing.
Yeah, I'm predicting an absolute shellacking. And I mean, by a shellacking, I'm over 10 goals for me. Back-to-back 10-goal wins for Port, and this game just means so much to the Port Adelaide community. I mean, you only have to look at what happened with J-Mac and the last couple of years, and I mean, on a structural front, new coach, new captain, new fitness coaches, new development coaches. Koshi's there, possibly the greatest recruit for Port Adelaide in the off-season, I'm going to call it. But no, I love what Port Adelaide have brought to the table, and I think Melbourne need to take a leaf out of their book on a side note. But Port Adelaide in a smashing for me.
I think you've hit it right on the head, Paige. Yep. Port for me.
Port for me.
Yeah, definitely Port driven by emotion. I don't think the Giants can do much to stop them.
All right, next game, the early game on Sunday, Geelong versus North at Docklands.
Docklands for a Geelong home game against North Melbourne.
Well, that's what I think. While Skill Stadium's being redeveloped,
and it's a replacement game for North members as well. So
another replacement game. Selling off
Going
games.
to Tassie
These
North.
guys. Carlton and Collingwood wouldn't do that, would they? No, they wouldn't.
No.
You've got to make money these days.
You've got the pokies to make your money, Carlton, so that's how you
That's right, yeah.
We'll just take the 72,000 members we've already got signed up. So.
Yeah, it's dirty money, but it's money.
Certainly checks are good checks.
That's why we roll.
Look, I think I'm probably the black sheep this morning, but I'm going for North. I think that they, again, a full list to choose from, and they probably should have pipped Collingwood last week. For me, quite a few North players didn't turn up last week against a very undermanned Collingwood side, so I've really liked North's pre-season, and I love North's mantra. So I think Geelong without Jared Rivers, I think Petrie will really come out firing this week, and Tarrant didn't do much last week, and maybe Hansen was the lone ranger up there forward. But for me, I'm going North, only just.
Geelong for me.
As a North supporter, I think Geelong will smash us.
No, I like North at Etihad, and I think they're in for a real shot, so I'm going North as well.
Yeah, North have actually won the last encounter at Etihad Stadium last year by 17 points. But there's a couple of handy inclusions for Geelong. They've got the return of Corey and Kelly. So I'm going to go Geelong, but in a close one.
Be a battle of the midfield, that one.
It will be.
So, the biggest game of the round, of course, Collingwood-Carlton.
Here we go, Paige.
Yeah.
I hope you're ready to wear black and white next week, pal, because...
Don't worry, I'm already in the planning stages of that.
Sitting next to you again. Who was in charge of seating arrangements? Because, I mean, I had to sit next to you on the show this week, and now I'm sitting next to you again.
Yep.
I feel dirty.
Just wait for next week on your show when you have to be wearing that lanyard with the love heart with Mick Malthouse's face in the centre.
You're going to stick it up, Mick.
Too good.
Interestingly, Mitch Robinson is named. So, yeah, what was I thought you had to take a week off with the concussion rule, or is
That rule's still baffling me. I just don't understand it. I think it needs to be someone within the umpiring department really needs to come out and definitively define exactly. Definitively define.
Can you define definitively?
I've done it. Awesome. They need to really come out and say what the go is with it, and it's the same thing with the sliding rule as well. I'm still not...
Send a tweet to AFL House and we'll see what happens.
Is Ben Reid playing?
Ben Reid is named.
Yeah.
Yep, and so is Heath Shaw as well. So
I think the only thing that's going to cost Carlton, and the midfield's incredibly good, and it's coming from a Collingwood supporter, I can acknowledge that. But I think where Carlton may fall down is, I mean, Eddie Betts usually kills us every game.
Massive loss.
That's a massive loss. He's basically like their centre-half forward, despite being 5 foot tall. But, I mean, loss of Sean Hampson, depending on who you speak to, that's a loss.
There's a win.
But I don't know. I think if Levi Casbolt is supposed to be the big great white hope Sunday afternoon up forward,
He needs to fix his kicking.
Yes,
that's where they'll fall down. I think forward targets, unless Carlton are going to do what many teams can't do, and that's they rely on their midfield to kick a lot of goals, then it'll be a shootout, because it has been in the past. But
Good to see Sam Rowe getting a go.
good story, fantastic
Cancer
story.
and all.
Performed well in the pre-season as well, so good to see him up and about.
I'm going with Collingwood for this one.
I'm going for Collingwood as well.
yep, pies.
I've actually tipped Collingwood, but...
So
yes.
you lied. On the SCP show, you lied. I dared you to be honest, and you lied to me. I'm going
I
to
was
burn
being
you.
honest, no, as to how we could win. I think we can win. We've won the past 2 encounters, but yeah, I've tipped you guys. I think more.
I'm not
out of
even
hope
confident
because
tipping
my
Collingwood.
tipping was that shite last week. But hopefully, that whoever I tip, the
I'm not
opposite happens.
confident at all. I mean, last time I went to a Collingwood-Carlton game, I walked away in tears, and a rubbish bin outside the MCG came off second best, and it got fly kicked, and I went to town on the poor bin and squatted away from MCG staff. But
hope that happens again.
let's just hope that I'm not really getting into fights with bins this time.
Yeah.
Now, the other big game this weekend, of course, West Coast Hawthorn over at Subiaco. Interesting to see that Luke Hodge is named, and he's not. He won't be the sub either, so he's pretty underdone. Although the Hawks have backed him in, I personally think he's one player that he needs to be fully fit to play.
Yeah, I agree. But I think on the flip side as well, I think Hawthorn have gotten used to not playing with Hodge, because he's been out for so many sort of sustained periods of time. So for me, West Coast at home, and I don't like Hawthorn at all in this game. I think they're going to start the year, none and zip.
I think,
hang on, 2 and zip.
Yeah.
That's not right.
None.
Yeah, no, I think West Coast as well. I think they'll come out firing this week. Hawks, for me, I can't see them winning over there with the squad that West Coast has got.
I'm just going to throw in a SuperCoach tip. Buddy Franklin, in the last 10 games, has not scored over 100 SuperCoach points. So that tells you something. Well, that's against West Coast over in Patterson's. So for me, if Buddy can't kick a winning score, neither can Hawthorn.
Is it a rolling lockout? Do I have to get rid of Buddy?
No, keep him in. I mean, keep the faith in him.
I mean, he might get 99, you never know.
Still under 100, and I'll still be right. That's all that matters.
And Sammy Mitchell always plays well over there as well, as I said in the captain's one. I think he's got 140 last time, I believe, against them.
He did, yeah. He had a blunder, but West Coast's midfield against Fremantle was just non-existent in round 1. So I think Shuey, Gaff, Selwood, Pritis will really stand up, and I still think they've got. Is Kerr still out for them as well?
Yeah, he's out. Yeah.
Yeah. So
he's
I mean,
available for selection, but he's going to play.
Yeah. So that's the issue. Again, back to Luke Hodge. I'm not quite sure that he's really going to be an asset I mean, he killed it in the for Box Hill last week in the VFL, but I'm not quite sure he's at AFL standard for match fitness, so to speak. But West Coast, I think, at home.
Yep, West Coast for me.
Yep, West Coast.
for me.
Yep. All right, now plugs. So SC Paige as well, and the SuperCoach Paige show are Wednesday afternoons, Wednesday evenings. Bound for Glory FM. Follow us on Twitter and on Facebook as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Bound for Glory News. How can I forget? BoundForGloryNews.com. Yeah. So, great show this week. Thanks for coming on, Paige, and
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for letting us pick your brain and get some insights.
Thanks for letting me beat you up for being a Carlton supporter.
All right.
Love each other, don't we,
Aw.
Paige?
Yeah.
Until next week.
It's a love
Yes.
You've been listening to Bound for Glory. Go Tigers.
I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?